over to Alabama basketball schedule, like I said, I mentioned in the last episode, we talked a little bit about the conference schedule and who Alabama had in the splits. Now we're going to actually go through the non-conference schedule. Nate Oates has once again scheduled absolutely tremendously. There is, just absolute heavy hitters on this. But I think that there's also a few, at the end of the day, there needs to be some easier games on there. A couple of the easier games we have not heard come out yet. We're still missing what are probably going to be two early bye games, if you will, and one that's probably going to happen around Christmas time. Those have not been mentioned yet. There have been a few of the quote-unquote easier games mentioned. But Nate Oates, from what we have today, the first game we have mentioned, and we know for sure, is on the 11th, the Monday, Alabama's going to be hosting McNeese State. And if you know anything about McNeese State, it is not a cakewalk. McNeese State probably will be a top 25 team. They're coached by our Will Wade, from LSU, all the, get out of here, all the stuff that went down with Trendon Watford, all of the allegations, all the FBI, rest in peace, Fluff, everything that comes with Will Wade, so back to Coleman Coliseum. I think that's going to be a really, really fun game, and that's going to be one that, is not your average bye game. That is not a bye game, and it will, I think, will be a good test early for some guys that have the ability to play power conference basketball, because the way the transfer portal is shaping up and, has worked out, McNeese State has a lot of guys on that roster that were at power conference just last year, right? So I think Will Wade has done a great job at McNeese. He did well in the getting to the tournament this past season, and I really do think he's going to give us a tough test. Then later that week, they play at Purdue. So this is rekindling, I guess, the pseudo rivalry, that happened in Canada this past season. So it was announced that Alabama is getting a home and home with Purdue, similar to the home and home they have with Creighton, which we'll talk about just a bit later. And the home and home with Purdue starts this season at Mackey Arena on the 15th. So that Friday, so Monday, McNeese, and then that Friday they'll be traveling to Mackey Arena to take on Purdue. I think Purdue is going to be really, really good this year. Matt Painter's done such a good job. They're not going to have Zach Edey, so it is going to be a different look Purdue team. But, I'm going to trust in Matt Painter, trust in his ability to do well with that team. I think that Matt Painter is a really good coach, and I really do expect that to be a very good game. Going at Purdue, I do not think is going to be easy, to say the least. Then is the game in Birmingham. So this season, our game in Birmingham is going to be hosting Illinois on the 20th. So, again, I would expect these are straight, McNeese, Purdue, Illinois. And that is three, just back-to-back-to-back, really, really tough games. Like I said, I do expect that there probably will be a game or two before that McNeese State game. But that's just a heavy start to the season. McNeese, Purdue, Illinois is a very, very heavy slate to start the season. Illinois, I expect probably to be a fringe top 25 team. I think Illinois, it's really going to depend on how their transfers do, how their incoming players do. I think that Illinois is going to be a really good team, but, ceases to be seen exactly how good Illinois will be. But I do think Illinois will be a very good team coming into this season. For reference, while I'm talking, I will pull up Jeff Goodman's rankings just so that I can go for reference. What some people are expecting by, each of these teams, because Alabama has a litany of teams in the top 25 on the rankings, especially if you include the SEC teams that they're going to be playing as well. So, as I mentioned, the next one's Illinois. Then is the MTE. So, for those of you not familiar with what an MTE is, the MTEs are what happens around Thanksgiving weekend, right? So Thanksgiving weekend is often what are called these MTEs, and it's these tournaments that everyone is involved in. Or sorry, most teams are involved in. There's like the Battle for Atlantis, there's Maui, and there's actually a new MTE this year, and that's the MTE that we're going to be involved in, and it's called the Players Era in Vegas. All the specifics have not come out as to how this will work out. The reports that we've heard from Matt Norlander and some others are that supposedly it's about $1 million per team that's going toward NIL that is going to be given for being in this tournament, as well as potentially $1 million for the winner to split amongst the players on the winning team. That's just some early reports from what we had heard maybe coming at, or maybe a part of this tournament. All the specifics for this tournament have not come out, but they have confirmed who is in the tournament. And from what we have heard, this is not like a true this is a true tournament, but it is not going to be run in a true like bracket style format. It's going to be Alabama. It's a 4-team pods, and each team is going to play each other. So Alabama is set to play Houston, Rutgers, and Notre Dame, right? So obviously, if we're going by what the most important things on that are going to be, is first off, Alabama versus Houston, right? Alabama, I'm sure Houston is going to be looking for revenge after losing to Alabama both games of the home and home, as well as just looking to knock off what's going to be a really, really good team. I think Houston's going to be really good this season. Obviously, I think Alabama's going to be really good this season. So I think that the two of those teams are going to be a great matchup. Then we look at Rutgers. Rutgers is going to have a lot of storylines because Rutgers is where Cliff Amore came from, right? So you have the Cliff Amore matchup in Vegas. I think that's going to be a really, really good matchup. Rutgers also has two highly touted incoming freshmen coming in with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. So that's going to be another matchup that I would expect. I think that Rutgers is going to be a pretty good team this year. It's going to ceases to be seen exactly how good, just due to the fact that Bailey and Harper are going to be freshmen. They're going to be, I'm sure, going to be placing some heavy reliance on those two guys. And so because of that, I do expect that it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for them. And since Alabama is going to be playing Rutgers early in the season, I think that bodes well for Alabama. Even if Rutgers does seem to be able to put it together, I do think that Alabama playing them early in the season has a very good chance of winning the game. I have John Fanta's top 25 here pulled up. So for reference, Fanta currently has Houston at number 4, Purdue at number 10, which we have mentioned both of those. Creighton, which actually is next up, is at 14. And then we've got the SEC teams of Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, A&M, Arkansas, all on this list as well. It looks like he does not have McNeese in his top 25. I do know of some other people that do. And again, Illinois currently not showing in that top 25. I think that they will be trying to battle for near that 25th spot if I was betting. So then on the 14th of for that Players Era tournament, that's going to be on the 26th through the 29th. I believe the games on that are the 26th, the 27th, and the 29th. Skipping Christmas Day, the 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Thanksgiving Day, the 28th, if I'm not mistaken. And then Alabama gets to host Creighton, a rematch of the game from last season that Alabama dropped in Omaha. I think this is going to be a really, really big game, especially with Ryan Kalkbrenner being back for Creighton. They do lose Baylor Shireman, I believe, and a couple other players. So I believe that Creighton is going to, maybe, I think that they may be worse, but at the end of the day, when you have a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner down low, I think that Creighton and the style of offense that they play is going to be able to do well. right? I think that Creighton has done a really good job. I think Doug McDermott has done a good job. Greg McDermott has done a really good job with that roster. And I think that getting Ryan Kalkbrenner back is huge. So I would not expect that to be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. But the rematch from last season is huge. Then we look at North Dakota. And this is a surprise for anybody that may not have paid attention to what happened. But Alabama announces they're going to be going to North Dakota on the 18th of December. And I'm sure there are some questions as to why is the University of Alabama playing at North Dakota? And the answer is very simple. Home game for Grant. This is a way I feel confident in Alabama being able to pay back Grant Nelson for coming back for his senior season, for his final season, I guess. This is a way for Alabama to be able to thank him for, all he's been able to give to the university. This is a way for Alabama to, be able to give him that extra, give his family a home game for him in his hometown, or near his hometown, I should say, and be able to Alabama get a bye game out of it. North Dakota is not very good, so this is Alabama at the end of the day when you see the rest of the schedule and who Nate Oates has put on it. Like I said, I've mentioned McNeese, Purdue, Illinois, the tournament, Creighton. Right, there's some really heavy hitters on this, and I'm actually still missing that SEC ACC challenge, which as soon as I hear who we pull for that, I will definitely be bringing that up on the next podcast that I record after that. But we currently do not know who we're drawing for the challenge. But with all of the teams already in the list, Alabama needs some easy games. And what better way than to give one of your players that took a chance on Alabama and is now coming back for another season, which coming into the year, I don't know if you heard all the stuff last season, there was a lot of talk of Grant Nelson trying to go to the draft. And so the fact that he's willing to come back, put the draft off for another season, try to win a national title for Alabama and be that stalwart at the 4, I think it's huge. And so for me, I think that it's a really, really good game for Alabama to kind of thank one of the players that got it to where it is today. He was a big key reason why they went on the Final Four run last season. I think that it's a really, really good opportunity for Alabama to be able to be able to thank a player that got them where they are. So I think that that's going to be a big one. It's a 2-for-1, I believe. So we're playing at North Dakota this season, and then the next 2 seasons they will be coming back to Coleman Coliseum. So they will be some of the bye games for the future. And at the end of the day, you need those games. So I think that that's, more than sufficient. North Dakota is not nearly as good of a team as Alabama would normally schedule, but I think that you definitely make the exception, when you're looking at that. I think that the strength of schedule piece may hurt us just a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's going to be on the road, and I think that Alabama will have more than enough high quadrant wins to be able to bolster a really, really good NCAA tournament resume to compete for a top seed. So I'm not at all concerned about it. And then the final team is Kent State. That's the final game that we're aware of as of this moment. Like I said, I expect, and from what I'm seeing, there's probably set to be 4 more games announced, and that's the SEC ACC challenge, and then 3 basically bye games, 2 of them early, and then 1 probably just after Christmas or around the Christmas time. Since the Kent State game is on the 22nd, my gut would be just after Christmas, just before SEC play starts. The last few seasons, like this past season, I believe we played Eastern Kentucky in that little time frame. One of those is kind of where I would expect the next easy games, so to speak, to come from. So we've got 4 more games that are set to be announced. I definitely will be covering when those games are announced, just making sure everyone is aware. If you'll follow along on Twitter, that's where I'm sure we'll talk about it first. As I mentioned, the other thing that I'm kind of on the lookout for is who the assistant coach is going to be. The names that I had heard floated around, and based on some conversations that Nate Oates had in the media, it sounds like he's going back to the NBA for this one. And so with the NBA Finals currently going on, I had heard potentially somebody that was on the Bucks or the Timberwolves. So I honestly don't know who it's going to be. But there were some names floated on some of those teams. So now that they're completely out of the NBA playoffs, I would expect that to potentially gain some steam, and especially gain some additional steam after the NBA Finals is over. The Finals is currently going on, so we should not have to wait too terribly long for that to come to fruition. So if you'll keep on the lookout for that, that's something that I'm expecting probably to come out in the coming 2 to 3 weeks, maybe. So that is probably some of the next basketball news. And I know I have not talked a ton